So when we're looking at the current events today, the cloud is really propped up as a really response to the current events of COVID. And I apologize to everybody. I didn't realize I was on mute. Um, we have a really an uncanny situation right now with technology and the global environment today, where more and more businesses are working from home, not necessarily in the brick and mortar. Everybody's beginning to go back, but quickly everybody's trying to figure out how the cloud can help prop up new technology and keep them on the cusp as technology is ever changing. So really, when you look at the evolution of cloud in relationship to applications that we use on a daily basis, really we have three main buckets, right? We have CRM, HR, payroll software, and then as well ERP or business process software. Um, CRM and HR applications, I call it kind of the cloud the cloud birthdays. Was really a lot of these applications were born in that time frame. So they were written for cloud first mentality. ERP has been along for a long time, manufacturing, distribution, different nuances around business process in general. And for instance, applications like Sage are really built in a modular stance. So best of breed technology, bringing in different third parties, ISVs, to enhance the overall central platform. The ERP is really continuously on the uprise because there are some new ERP applications that are cloud first and written from that standpoint, but there are also a lot of applications that customers are using across the world that really were not written with a cloud first mentality, and they're looking for unique ways to optimize that environment as technology and security changes. So you're starting to see that uptick even faster now because of COVID. And that's really what Cloud at Work does. Is we work directly with Sage, and as well focus 100% on Sage to optimize that traditional on-prem application in a SaaS-like environment. Just some quick stats to show you, the transition of where cloud computing has gone over the last 3 years. There's been a large shift from on-premise to the cloud or as a service models, and the breakdowns are below. A lot of what you're seeing in this shift is not only around core business apps like Office 365 and pieces like that, but also around ERP movement. The main reason for this spike in adoption of the cloud, in my opinion, is because of the ever rising threat of cybersecurity and how vulnerable everyone really is if you're not taking some very basic steps and continuing to keep your finger on the pulse as to where those threats are coming from, and how to stay abreast of those situations. If you think back to 2007, 2008, I'm sure um, I'm not alone in saying that, really we weren't thinking about it too much as business owners. We we probably felt that this was really reserved for, you know, uh, government attacks or major corporations that had a ton to lose. And quickly we realized that it wasn't necessarily they were going after something to steal, but if they could make you feel vulnerable or put companies in a vulnerable position or halt their business operation, that companies would really pay anything to get their data back and to get their business back on track, because most folks at that time weren't really doing proper backup, weren't taking steps around cybersecurity, and weren't taking it serious. So slowly over time, you just see this trend of away from major corporation hacks, which still happen, but the regular business up and down Main Street being infiltrated by phishing attempts, which is basically just throwing a net and hoping something gets caught in it. Unfortunately, too many people still are being impacted by this, and even cloud providers are being impacted by this because they're cutting corners and not taking the right steps. Some things that Cloud at Work does, we'll get into in more detail in a little bit, but we take a very, very strong approach to cloud computing and to data security and cybersecurity. So much so that we use tier 4 data centers across the United States. We have SOC 2 compliance, GDPR compliance, NIST framework in those data centers. And then as well, even within Net at Work, we do compliances and security provisions like SOC 2 Type 2, SOC 2 Type 1, and take ourselves through a very rigorous cybersecurity process. And even, I think in the coming weeks, months, you're going to see a lot more start to pop up, because of this transition from localization of data, as far as people coming to an office and staying within their LAN, their local area network, and now this big transition to the WAN, or the wide area network. What this does is it limits communication between employees. And really, the number one vulnerability in most cybersecurity threats are your employees, are your people clicking on something, plugging something in, doing something malicious possibly. So these types of activities, when you don't have that communication, or are not used to working or actively collaborating remotely, you're used to getting up and walking over to someone's desk, or maybe hitting 214 # when you need to get your IT guy's extension. It's very different. And as well, even opening up all of these different endpoints across the country, where maybe your business isn't set up for having 40, 50 people access your systems remotely, not just from a technical standpoint as far as performance like bandwidth and resources and so forth, but possibly just not even from an endpoint security perspective, and allowing those different uh, those different devices in securely. So a lot of things going on right now, and I think more to come there, as far as infiltrations and vulnerabilities. So what are some of the things that we can do, as a company, to really help protect and set ourselves up for success? The first thing that we need to do is we need to take a step back and really evaluate what types of risk are we willing to take on as an organization. What types of risk is acceptable risk, and which is non-acceptable. Um, if you if you're not thinking not only about technology and how to change technology, but also thinking about your internal evaluation process and how to update or change that along with the times of the technology, sometimes it just gets lost in the shuffle, and things that maybe are important, uh, never get brought up, or never get factored into the decision. You'll see this with cloud companies. There's a lot of them out there. Um, there are companies like AWS and Azure and Google. There's companies within the Sage ecosystem. I can name 10 of them off the top of my head. And and so there's so many different options out there using that one word cloud. It's how do you find the right company for you? The first thing that you need to do is understand things like downtime, understand things like acceptable risk, like we mentioned, and then set those expectations and have those expectations be non-negotiable. If you look at, for instance, if you're looking at moving more risks to a service provider, meaning you want things like redundancies and DR, and highly available architecture and security policies and compliances, these things cost money. The companies that are charging little to no money for hosting services are the ones that are doing little to nothing on the back end. So you always have to remember that there's no great deal, or major discounted deal when you're looking at cloud computing. It's pretty standard. Most of the pricing, as far as resources go and services go, are pretty standard. But what happens is a lot of people get caught up in the mix as far as looking at pricing and not understanding it's not apples to apples. So we'll come back to secure backup, but some of the things that we do is, we started the company really geared towards virtual private cloud computing. So this is our main example of how we do not cut corners. We take a very, very strong approach to cloud computing, and we look at this very seriously. So everything that we do for X3 is virtual private. So we guarantee 99.99% uptime. We have two tier 4 data centers in the United States, one in Texas, one in Philadelphia, where we maintain NIST framework, GDPR compliances, SOC 2, Type 2, ISO, all of the major compliances within those data centers. And those facilities are 24 by 7 by 365. And as well, our staff is 24 by 7 by 365. Because we build and architect virtual private, we are dedicating virtual firewalls, we're dedicating virtual networks, all of the resources for your environment, all of the licensing for your environment. So we're able to build these environments without any limitation or red tape. Within our virtual private cloud, there's not one thread connecting one customer to another. And that's very important because when you look at some of the cybersecurity threats that have impacted other cloud providers in the Sage space, it wasn't necessarily this major attack on that provider. It was a customer clicked on something they shouldn't have. They let in a threat. That threat infiltrated that environment and then found a central thread from the provider that connected it to every other customer in that data center. That's a problem, right? So if you have a cloud provider who's using central management tools or using shared Active Directory or using different types of virtualization platforms that aren't able to isolate and self-manage, those things are very important, and it's not things that are very readily available as far as comparison. The other piece that I've seen with Sage customers getting put in a vulnerable position is not taking the right redundancy policies when it comes to customer data. Within Cloud at Work, we guarantee every customer, no matter if you're spending $100 a month with us or $100,000 a month, you have 48 hours of snapshot data stored on a separate network within the production data center. You have daily backups for 30 days stored in the opposite data center of production, and as well, you have your production data. So every customer, no matter what, has data on 3 separate networks in 3 separate locations, no matter what. Then customers have the option to fold in disaster recovery, which creates real-time replication and active environments where we're updating real-time the changes that you're making in production to the DR site as well. So now if you fold in DR, customers have 4 locations of data. If for some reason your environment became infiltrated and an employee clicked on something or something happened to your production environment, you know that you have 3 other locations of data to pull from, so that way you're not put in a vulnerable position. A lot of companies aren't doing that. A lot of companies are taking the stance of it's your job to do backups, or we'll do backups but they're on the same network. But what happens when that environment becomes infiltrated? So do those backups. So something to really think about is data presence and data positioning. The other piece is everything that we do is very transparent. So we're pricing this based on per resource pricing. I'm going to show you the pricing tool that we use as far as Sage X3 goes, and I think it really adds a lot of relevance to what makes us extremely unique, which I'll get into in a minute. But everything after the fact, everything is based on per unit pricing and very transparent, so we can collectively figure out how to scale together and pay as you grow rather than pay as you go. The biggest difference of what makes us unique in the space is the fact of really 3 main things. We have within the Sage ecosystem, Net at Work is the largest X3 Sage business partner and largest Sage business partner in North America and top 3 in the world. By having that type of presence, we're able to really have a deep understanding and knowledge of the different applications that we host, X3 being one of them. The second tier is that we have a very deep understanding of cloud technology, and our cloud technology by itself can really stand on its own against any cloud provider in the world. But we have a very unique situation because we want to ultra focus on the Sage experience. So if you're using Sage applications, we want to create the most optimized cloud experience for you using our virtual private cloud technology and using our application expertise. The reason for that is if you're using Sage and you use an AWS or you use an Azure or you use a Google or you use another cloud company that might not know your application, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing between the application provider and that infrastructure provider. Your app provider doesn't know the infrastructure, your infrastructure provider doesn't know the app. And what happens is a lot of the issues happen within general initial provisioning and architecture, and as well happen within the gray area or the SQL area from a DBA perspective. These are all things that Cloud at Work and Net at Work solve underneath the hood, not necessarily putting that burden or putting that back to our customers to shoulder. We're able to solve problems faster and create better experiences. And that leads me into our third piece, which is our support. Every dollar that we make right now, we're reinvesting twofold back into our customer experience. It's everything to us. It's the only way that we feel we can create that super experience using Sage applications. So much so that Sage actually chose Cloud at Work as its go-to cloud solution for the X3 team. So the X3 direct team actually uses Cloud at Work as its cloud provider for its customers. And we have multiple partners out there in the ecosystem using Cloud at Work's virtual private cloud and other solutions to really drive value for their customers as well. Let me just show you a little bit what I mean about the intellectual property around our solution and how we think of this. So if I switch over here, this is a calculator that we created, our configurator. So we take a very deep dive into X3 and understanding your application. Now, obviously, if you're working with us already and working with our X3 team, we can fill this out for you. But a lot of times customers are not working with us and are asking for cloud options. So we ask things like the number of users and things about your business here. We then also ask volume questions, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but we ask some very detailed volume questions, and this really helps us from a provisioning standpoint. We ask questions about the modules that you're using. We ask questions about the different types of third parties and ISVs that you're using. And these are all going to help us dynamically create a quote or a configuration. So if we just did a mock sample here and we said 20 users here, and we'll just skip over this volumes piece for right now, but we're using distribution, we're using manufacturing, there's 3 operating companies, we are using warehouse management, we are using ADC, and we're using Sage Intelligence with 5 users. We are using Avalara, we are using QBuild, and we're going to use data links as well. And let's say there's 5. Now, this is going to, obviously you're seeing numbers here, and here's a number at the bottom. Let's not worry about this number so much as how it dynamically builds these servers for us. So we now know the resources that we probably are going to need, and then we can take a human approach to really designing this better. But this really gets us off the ground and to think uniquely about your environment specifically based on your inputs. Now, the last piece to really think about are these volumes. So X3 especially is about these volumes as far as resources needed. And this calculator is dynamically built to allow you to have certain thresholds based on your inputs. And if your volumes are under, we're able to really get aggressive with pricing. If your volumes are over those thresholds, then it automatically adds additional resources here. So we can set the right expectation with you based on your unique situation. So just one simple way that we're really changing the game as far as customer experience before going to the cloud, setting better expectations, and creating better long-term relationships. That's what we're all about. Some of the other pieces that we do, let me just get this set up here so we can look at it. Some of the other pieces that we do to really create good experiences in the cloud, believe it or not, is we offer a very simple backup product, and it's our secure backup for X3. We give customers the ability to utilize our data center for very low cost, $50 per 100 gig. It gives companies 14 days of retention and basically provides them access to a third-party data center to move data offsite efficiently. Very inexpensive, and again, a lot of our customers subscribe to this just simply for a tertiary backup or having an additional layer there for redundancy purposes. We're again in closing, all about creating great experiences for our customers. We're super customer service oriented, and we're constantly evaluating the investments that we're making into cloud at work to showcase that. So if you have any questions, please type them in now, and I'll be happy to answer any of them. Yeah, just type them in now if you can. Okay. Well, if you have any questions, if you want to screenshot this or jot this down, this is my direct contact information, my direct phone line, email, our website. You can check us out there as well. And if you ever need anything, you ever want to have a question, just give us a call and let us know how we can help. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day.